my name across my face. Can you see my face clearly?
Yes.
Okay, well,
Okay. We're
okay.
going to start here in just a second. Welcome, everybody, to Educator Circle. And today we have a very special feature called the Teacher Feature. And we have a special guest, Beverly Claybrooks, which is our teacher feature for this month. I met Beverly when I was working with a group of school leaders and educators in Fulton County at Fulton County School System. And we had an amazing professional development day. And I came to learn about Beverly during this day. And she took time during that day to encourage all of the new teachers. As you know, in America today, we have less than, most teachers have less than 5 years of teaching experience. And one of the great crises in America is keeping teachers in the profession. But that has not been the case for Miss Beverly. She has been in education for over 40 years. And so today in our teacher feature, you are going to come to learn about her and enjoy her just as much as I have. And she's going to share her nuggets, her of wisdom, insights in talking to all of the different educators across America and those that are potentially aspiring educators. So Beverly, tell us a little bit about your background and what would you tell someone new coming into education today, brand new teacher?
Well, my background is that I've been teaching all of my life. I love it. I think that the key word is passion. You must have a passion for young people. You must be dedicated. You must really listen. You know, there are two aspects of the word listen. I'm listening, but I'm not hearing you. So you really have to listen to understand what the needs of these children are. You have to be more involved in their life personally. It should not just be a job for you. This is an honorable profession and a great undertaking. So one must take the time to thoroughly understand the children that they work with. And you have to do more than be there at school Monday through Friday. I have done a number of things. I have been to the hospital with kids. They call me in the middle of the night, their grandmother's sick, and the kids crying for the teacher. Well, yeah, that's a little bit unusual. But when they understand that you have that love for them and that you really are part of their family, they'll do that. So you get that kind of personal involvement. I have been to their baptisms. I have done all sorts of things with young people. And so I buy into their life. They buy into what I'm trying to teach. Because until they buy into what you're doing, you may have a lost cause there. And you don't want that. As far as my background, Dr. Lisa, would you like for me to share with them what I shared with you in the beginning? And then I can continue from this pace where we
would
are.
really love for you to share with our audience what you shared with me and how education has changed. If you wouldn't mind being a little transparent as you were with me, talking about your experience as an African-American educator, as a young woman first getting into the field. And if you wouldn't mind sharing that, I would love for you, our audiences, to hear your life story in that way.
Okay, I'll be glad to share that. I first started teaching at Carter Lawrence Elementary School in Nashville, Tennessee. That was a school that had a particular multi-million-dollar program going on there. And it was proven that if you have the best teachers, all the children have everything that they needed given to them. They had 2 very good meals a day. that their scores would be comparable to those youngsters who were in the suburban areas. And this was a program that was sponsored by Ford Foundation. And we taught in what we said was a bubble, because we had delegations from Japan and all over the world coming to watch us do our thing. And we didn't have grades, we had levels. And so that was a very inspiring program. I got to work with the finest of teachers, and being my first year, that was, I think, that was the jewel that gave me the ability to do what I do now, because these folk were dedicated. So I was very happy doing my job there, and I had been evaluated by Ms. Ann Price of the Banneker school system and all this kind of thing. When one day the principal calls me down to the office and he says, Beverly, I need to talk to you. Well, when they give you a certain tone, you kind of know what to expect. And I'm like, oh my goodness, have I done something wrong? He said, no, you've been doing things right. He said, we have selected you and the consultants to be our first young teacher that's going to desegregate faculties. Well, I wanted no part of that. I'm thinking, what in the world? At this point, I'd only been teaching 2 years. And why are you sending me? And his words to me were, in this kind of situation, we have to send our best. We had to send someone who could speak the language, who has the knowledge and the ability to represent our race. And he said, you're that person. And I thought, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
So he was African American.
Yes.
Okay.
He was African American. At this time, this was an entire Black situation.
Okay.
Yes. And so I was then sent to Turner School on Nolensville Road. Well, he went with me. He always called me his daughter. So he went with me to that school and introduced me to the principal. And I was just petrified, because I'm 22 years old. And the first day that I was there, they threw a brick through my window. Dr. Lisa, I don't think I shared that with you.
Yeah.
And I was just...
Were all the students Caucasian?
All the students were Caucasian.
Oh, wow.
Yes. The janitor was the only, I was the only Black teacher there.
Oh, my goodness.
And only the janitor.
Imagine that. And what year was that?
This was in, let me see, 68.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
So during that time, what was going on in history is what? Tell our audience, because a lot of our young listeners do not know anything about Black history at all. So tell them a little bit about what was going on in history when you're coming into the profession.
At this time in history, there were schools for white students and schools for Black students. And, you know, if you were in an affluent neighborhood, you got the best of everything. Just a regular, and Carter Lawrence was located in the ghetto, for lack of a better word to say. And so it was a very different time in history. In a Black school, there was all Black staff. In the white schools, there were all white staff. And so here I'm being sent to an entire white staff, and I'm not in an affluent area at this time. I'm now being sent to the low income area where there are white people. And my principal told me at the end of that year that he had received calls from all the parents said, I want you to take my kids out of the N-words room.
Oh my goodness.
And his reply, and his name was Homer Wright, his reply to them was, if these children go to this school, they will stay in Mrs. Claybrooks' class. And he said, though, at the end of the year, those same parents called him back and said, we sure are glad that you did what you did. She was a wonderful teacher. Our kids love her. It was the best year that they've had in school. The faculty was amazing. They were just kind-hearted and just accepted me. And I know I was the youngest one on staff at that time. So I went through that transition and handled it well.
Well,
And
what
I
was
was
your
pretty
experience?
excited.
What was your experience with the new leadership? You had support of your mentor who thought
Yes.
of you as a daughter, but when
Yes.
you came into this new environment, what was your experience with the leadership of that school? It sounds like over time you were embraced, but what happened initially?
Well, that's going to be the second one that I'm
Oh,
going to
okay.
tell you about.
Okay.
Initially, at this particular school, Mr. Wright was a very kind-hearted person.
Okay.
And so I fit in well in this school, and the teachers just kind of huddled around me and protected me. Um, there was one, Miss Billie Jean Hall, just took me as her child. And she gave me lots of things and lots of ideas, and they just kind of put their arms around me. So, did excellent there. No
Good.
problems. Until I became pregnant and went on maternity leave. So I'm thinking after maternity leave that where am I going to go back? I'm going to go back to Turner School. I desegregated the faculty, and that's where I get to go back. So when I called the personnel office, the gentleman said to me, well, Beverly, you did an outstanding job there, but we have a bigger assignment for you. We're going to send you to a very affluent neighborhood. And the only Black people that these youngsters have been exposed to are those that are the maids and the chauffeurs and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, why in the world is it always me? And he laughed. He said, because you're good at what you do. So I went on to this school. And when I walked into the principal's office, she looked at me and said, Miss Claybrooks, honey, I had a white girl that I wanted for this position, but the Board of Education says that you're this highly intelligent, smart, little young Black teacher, and they want you to have this position. Well, you'll prove it to me. And I looked her right in her eyes and I said, and I'll do just that. So I got off to a rocky start at that school. How did I feel on the inside? I felt quite frightened, but I didn't show it on the outside. She was very critical of me. She would walk in my room and say, well, the desks aren't all exactly straight. And then she would go to the time when she went to school when they were screwed down to the floor or something. And I'm thinking, but these little seats aren't screwed to the floor. What are you talking about? So I went on and did my job there. As a matter of fact, I said, let me just interject this. When you're teaching, it's more than just reading out of the textbook. You've got to have some energy. You have to create ways that will make learning fun for children, and they'll become involved in it. So I thought, well, we were doing a play, Alice in Wonderland.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in one of our basal readers. And so I thought, well, I can take this play and I can do what I want to with it. I can teach telling time.
Yeah.
I can do all kinds of magnificent things with this play. Well, I did just that. It was on television, and my principal started to love me. The parents were having me over to their house and that kind of thing, which she had never heard of. So they were very receptive to me and what I did for their children. I walked in school one morning. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, you're frozen. Okay. And one of the teachers said, I heard about you on the news last night. And I said, no, There are a lot of Claybrooks in Nashville. I was not on the news last night because my mind went to somebody's in trouble. And she said, oh, no, it was the mayor of Nashville saying what a great job you were doing with his granddaughter.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went on from there. I also went, of course, the outcome was great, but I had to work at it. And every day I had to be my very best. And when we did the play, my props came from the children's theater. Our cafeteria was packed with grandparents and all. And my pianist was a lady formerly of the Metropolitan Opera.
Yeah.
That's the kind of people that lived in that neighborhood. It was very affluent. And so they liked me. I proved that I can do all things. And my policy has been, you have to let your creative juices flow. The race thing, yes. That only let me know I had to be the best at all times, at whatever I did. And I could never let anything down. I had to keep it moving.
Good.
I also went through the busing thing, where they decided to bus children from lower income areas to the affluent areas. And that was one meeting that I shall never forget. I remember vividly, there was the Board of Education's lawyers versus that particular school's attorneys on busing. And I sat there and I listened to people saying, we don't want them out here. They're ignorant. They steal. And I'm sitting there looking at myself, looking at my skin, and I'm thinking, these people have accepted me. What is the problem here? These are children we're talking about. And there were a lot of things that went on in that meeting that I don't care to repeat.
Right.
But,
and tell our listeners what that court case, what that was.
Well, it was the Board of Education versus busing.
Okay. Wasn't it Brown versus Board of Education?
No, that's not the one. No,
okay.
No, that's not.
That was when they did the desegregation. So where were you when that was happening?
When
they did Brown versus Board of Education.
Where was I in my life when that happened? Probably
was that after the busing?
It was after the busing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first, this was just about giving the children the opportunity to ride a bus to school.
And to be in that area, to be exposed to that kind of education.
Okay.
Here again, where you had the best teachers and the children were so well traveled, they would tell you where they're then, we're vacationing in this country or that country. And so they wanted the African American students to be a part of that.
Great.
But as I left this meeting, and I was absolutely heartbroken because I'd never seen that side of the people in the community. The side that I had seen was one that was very receptive of me and very kind and appreciative of my work. But as I walked out of the cafeterium's doors, there was a line of people. And actually, they kind of made an aisle where I had to come down the center. And as I walked out, they shook my hands and said, thank you for the job that you do here. And then we apologized for what was said in there. And I mean, that was an amazing experience for me right there. And the very interesting thing about this, Dr. Lisa, is one of the persons that had the most negative things to say, and I had never met the man, he steps out and said, well, Mrs. Claybrooks, I'm delighted to meet you. You're my daughter's teacher, and you are just exceptional. Your race should be very proud of you. Now, how do you take that? You just got through talking about my race, but yet when it comes to me, then that's different. So for a young person That's a lot.
Right.
So, all in all, though, it was a good experience because it taught me a lot about people. And it let me know what I had to be in this society.
Mm-hmm.
Here again, we go back to, I've got to be the best that I can be at all times.
Mm-hmm. And I want our young teachers coming into the force today to realize one of the greatest opportunities is to be able to work as a colleague with teachers like you and the life experience. So we're going to take a break for a minute. We're listening to Miss Beverly Claybrooks from Fulton County Schools. She is this month's Educator Circle teacher feature, and we're listening to Educator Circle with Dr. Lisa. Welcome back, everybody, to Educator Circle with Dr. Lisa, and we are in the segment this month, the teacher feature, and we have Miss Beverly Claybrooks from Fulton County Schools. Fulton County is on the very far western part of Kentucky, and if you go right across the street in some parts of that, you will be in Tennessee. And so Beverly has had a wealth of experience, 40 years plus of experience with classroom teaching, and I had the opportunity to work with her school system on 5-star schools and 5-star classrooms specifically. And Beverly, give us some of the highlights and the nuggets of what you think were going to help the educators in your school system based on what we had in the training that day.
Well, I think that the way we discussed the needs of the children and now the attitudes of the teachers is so important. How well you are prepared and how well you're able to develop an excellent classroom climate, because that is so important. The ability to establish rapport with the youngsters, how you develop that, the ability to have great classroom management skills.
Well, what were some of your individual experiences, your special tricks for establishing a strong classroom culture and good classroom management in your classroom over the years?
When I walk in, I tell my kids, good morning, how are you? This is going to be the best year of your life. I promise you that. And I let them know, I tell them that stuns them to begin with. And then I tell them, guess what? We all make mistakes. So if you make a mistake in here, so what? That's why you're here at school. My next thing is, there's not going to be any bullying. And my point that gets them so well is, if you're going to miss anything, I want you to miss it right now. I can fix it. If you miss it right now. So don't ever be ashamed to miss a problem or not to know the correct answer. So I start out like that. I never have any not rules. I don't bring not into my vocabulary, because within itself that produces negativism. So I stay on that positive mark throughout everything. And then I share with them things that we're going to do together and how important their input is to me. I also tell them there'll be a time I'll make a mistake. I want you to correct me. Well, that's kind of astonishing to little kids when you say that. And it is. And I let them know I'm real just like you. I cry, I get upset, I'm happy, I'm unhappy. So teachers are people that are here to help you, but we're also human. In that way, my year starts off quite well. And when I start to teach, it's not going to be dull. I have all kind of cute things that I do with them, my wiggle, my jiggle thing, all kinds of things to give them a little feeling of happiness, that I'm not going to just sit here and be told, well, we're going to page this, that, and the other, or get your Chromebooks ready, or whatever, whatever. I have to put a joy into what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And when you put joy into that, then the kids buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like the story that I love to tell. This lady teacher was being so nice to the kid because his parent was visiting, and the kid looks at the teacher and says, I wish you treated me like this every day. And so you don't want that kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
You want it to be an everyday thing. So that's my classroom climate, is that we all are the same. It doesn't matter what your race is.
Mm-hmm.
We all are the same, and we all are going to gain something this year. If you just let me, I'll take you places that you hadn't been before. We'll build all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done just that. One year I built a rocket ship that would seat 3 astronauts. Did we get laughed at? We sure did. And I shared that with them because the other kids thought, oh, that'll never happen. Not gonna happen. But guess what? We did it. And that was put on television also. So you've got to do things with them. You can't be afraid to let them know that you love them.
Mm-hmm.
That's the next thing. And when I was referring to listen, I can hear you, but then I can't hear you. If I say, if the kid's dog got hit by the bus and he's trying to tell me about that, and I say, oh yeah, you know, that happens, go sit down. I've lost that child for that day.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe for the next 2 months. That's dependent upon you. But you've got to really listen and say, well, I'm going to take a little time. I've had that experience. Let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are gazillion things that I do to keep that classroom climate going and to let all children feel that they're important, that they're needed, that they have something to share. I have a little girl whose family speaks Spanish. The only English she hears is when she comes to school with me. So her leadership job is that she's going to teach us a Spanish word each day.
Mm-hmm.
And I have all kinds of leadership positions. I have a kid over technology. You know, I have all kind of teacher leaders. I have those that are help me with the mathematics and reading and science. I give leadership roles to children. Then they're very invested into learning. Guess what? There are times when those children are better teachers than we are, and we might as well forget it.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes the language is a barrier within itself.
Mm-hmm.
And the children speak the same language. So that is very helpful. So when you get all of these things going on within your classroom climate is going to be great. Guess what? So will your classroom management skills, because then you're not having to continuously correct students. And because that's how much time you lose doing that. How much creativity is gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I keep the positiveness going. You've got to have order. You have to have children in leadership roles, and they need to know how important they are. In our school now, we have our kids conduct the parent-teacher conference. They have to tell them what they've been doing. And we have our leadership notebooks. They show them the evidence. We have our charts and our graph. We have our data. We're teaching them how to do that. That makes them proud. It makes their parents proud. So it takes all of that to have a classroom that is conducive to learning. You've got to buy in.
Right.
Now then, if you think it's an easy job, it isn't. And it's going to require more than you going home grading papers at night.
Mm-hmm.
It requires your heart being focused on the needs of the young people.
What would you say to a teacher now that has had some tough experiences and is feeling a little bit discouraged because they haven't had the outcomes that they've expected?
Well, I would say that the first thing that you have to do is take a real good look at yourself and see how you can improve yourself. Because if I don't have confidence in me, then the outcome is not going to be good for the youngsters.
Mm-hmm.
I have to believe and know that I am approaching whatever it is in the correct manner. Then you also need another teacher that you can speak with, a mentor that you can go and talk to and share. See, teachers have to have the ability to share. You cannot ever say that you know it all. If you become comfortable in feeling that you've got this thing under control, that's where you've made your first mistake.
Mm-hmm.
None of us have everything under control. We all learn each day. I would say for that teacher, you find a good mentor and you talk with that person. Then I would also say, and there'll be teachers that don't agree with this, why not talk to some of those students and ask them what they think? In my classroom, I have a student council of the little kids.
Yeah.
And you know what? Once a month, I treat them to a pizza lunch. I order that. And the youngsters and I sit down and we talk about what's going on in the classroom. How can I approach this better? What are your thoughts? And they will tell me what I think. Or maybe, Miss Beverly, we should handle it this way.
They sure do, don't they? They have
Yes.
Opinions.
Yes,
right?
They have opinions. And you have to listen to those. Because guess what? How about them calling someone out? Well, no. As a member of the student council, we said that we weren't going to do those kinds of things. Well, then other kids listen. It's not me. It's what they're saying. And that is another great way to work with children. And we're talking about second grade now with the student council. So there are many tools that you can use, but you cannot.
How important would you say professional development is
That you
today?
You must have that.
What are some of the great
needs?
What type of professional development do you think? What type of professional development do you think that the educators that you're working with today are in need of? Where do you see the biggest gaps?
Well, actually, just to be truthful, more of what you presented to us.
Which was?
More of the 5-star classroom. I think that makes a great impact right there. We had many different kinds of training. You know, we do the training on the data and on suicide and many different things. But I think that we need more of the kind of training that you gave us. And professional development is needed. And I also think that teachers have to have a choice or a say in the kind of professional development that you need, because what I may need, someone else may not need that. So you have to come together and discuss the needs of the entire system. So I think that's something that should be a school effort.
Well, one of the things that we found in education, and I know you probably experienced this, that education has changed so drastically over time. And that's what we started talking about when we first started 5-star schools. But the main thing about 5-star classrooms is that it's simple. It's very easily understood, and there are 5 different elements of a 5-star classroom. And one of the things that I noticed about you and your outcomes of a 5-star classroom is most of those things that you knew naturally and could do naturally. So when you are receiving 5-star classroom training, it's reinforcing what you already innately know. But a lot of the teachers that are coming into the workforce today that might be getting discouraged, it might be because certain things are not natural to them. Like with you, you have natural ability to work with children and to develop a classroom culture. You understand how to build a safe, orderly, caring environment, which is one of the elements of a 5-star classroom. And so do you think that these things that come natural to you can be taught to someone that does not have these natural abilities, such as the workshops that I've done in your school system?
Of course, it can be taught. All you need is to be open-minded. And if that is a fact, if you are open-minded, then you can be taught anything. Mm-hmm. That's my belief. And that's what we have to do. I tell my kids, there are a couple of things: listen and learn. And that applies to adults also. I must listen, and if I'm listening to what you're telling me, I can learn some things. Mm-hmm. And I can go back and use these immediately. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take a long time to do these kinds of things.
Right.
But you must be willing to listen, learn, execute. You must do those things.
And Miss Beverly, what would you say to our listeners who are school leaders? We have a lot of superintendents, principals, assistant superintendents, assistant principals, people with all different types of titles that are school leaders, trying to do the very best they can. They always have so many different fires showing up on their desk. What can they do to keep a handle on providing the best leadership for the teachers and instructional leadership for the teachers?
They must have conversations with them. They must be very transparent. They must be an encourager, because teachers need that. Mm-hmm. Some days they just feel down and lost. So they need to do that. They need to counsel with them. And those are just my beliefs. And if you do those things, that will certainly help your staff. You have to have meetings that have great in-service. We all know that. But then you have to get on a personal basis with these mm-hmm. folks. That's what I'm trying to say. It becomes a personal thing. And as administrators, a lot of times we're like, oh my goodness, that's administration. But administration are people also. Mm-hmm. So they need to come, talk, sit in that classroom and help you, give you some ideas, send you to another classroom to observe. All those kinds of things they can do on the spot. Mm-hmm. And those are some of the things I think that administrators need to do.
And with the, go ahead. I was just going to say about the 5-star classroom checklist and the app that the principals are going to use. How efficient and effective do you think that's going to be with your staff growth?
It's going to be very efficient and effective. I know that already. We have a good group. Mm-hmm. We do. And our administration is absolutely outstanding, because the things that we've talked about and the things that I suggested, they already do. Mm-hmm. They'll come by, they'll talk to you, they'll ask you, is everything going okay? And if teachers need help, they will send, they call me mom. A lot of the young teachers, I'm the mom. The mom will go see about her students needing other teachers if they need me to do that. Mm-hmm. I will do that, or they will come to me. And the principals have made that okay. Mm-hmm. And they do the same thing. And I think it was like I told Miss Sandra, my principal, the other day. I remember last school year was her first year to serve as our principal. Oh. And at the end of the year, she walked in my classroom. She looked at me and she said, you're not going to leave me, are you? And I told her she did not know what that meant to me. And just those kinds of things, that means a lot to a classroom teacher. It lets you know you're needed. It lets you know you're appreciated. It lets you know that you're wanted. Now then, in some instances, that's not the case. At other places, I have a lot of friends that are teachers. My youngest daughter is a teacher. And every school does not embrace the way my school does. And I have to keep that in mind. Of course, I've been through a lot more than other people there also.
Right.
So I've had it all kinds of ways. But the mere fact that when they come and they talk to you and they encourage you or they send help for you, it leads to the type of environment where they'll be receptive to the kind of thing that you do, and that they'll want it and they'll talk about it, because it isn't something that's so very difficult to implement. You can go ahead and do those things and enjoy doing them. You will find yourself embracing. And I guess you can see I have a positive attitude, so that's just who I am.
Right.
And I enjoy learning. But I think that's what our administrators have to do. You have to meet personally. You must have a personal relationship with your teachers to keep them in there. Because as you know, a lot of young teachers don't stay past 5 years. You know that. And for a number of reasons. Number one, sometimes they didn't know it was as tough as it is. Because teaching is an honorable profession, but it is also a tough profession. You know, when I first started, technology wasn't what it is now. Everything is, you know, inclusive of a lot of technology, so it has changed. You had a lot of parental help earlier on, and the way parents work now, they can't come like they once did to school. So the environment of teaching has changed over the years. You have to be accepting of that and work with it the best that you can. Now, the other thing is, you have to develop a relationship with parents. I'm back to the classroom. I know I'm veered a little bit off.
That's okay.
But you have to develop a relationship with parents. Now, there are people that say, well, you know, you can't do this now. And it's always a bunch of reasons why you can't, but you can. It won't be with 100%, but look at those you can relate to. And parents talk to each other. We need to realize that. So if you're carrying that positive message and you're showing the change that you're trying to make in children and the help that you're giving them, that's going to pass through that community. So you have to have strong relationships with parents. Now, the other thing is it's gone to a grandparent situation where the grandparents will be the ones that are coming to parent-teacher conference. So you've got to have that grandparent relationship. Yeah, it's a big job, but you have to look at all aspects of it. You have to weigh things, and then you have to forget about self.
Yes.
Because it requires 100%. It does. And it's not an easy thing. And if you look at other professions, doctors don't normally practice for 5 years and they quit.
Yes.
They're going at it. So then what does that say? It says the mind of teachers must change. When you go into this, you must realize, I've got to work at this. And that there are going to be good days and there are going to be not so good days, but I can balance this thing off. And you can. And administrators are a deep part of that. The other thing is when administrators tell you that they need you, that gives a teacher a boost. We can say it doesn't, but it does. when they say,
Right.
hey, I need you. I appreciate the work that you're doing. I need you. Then that makes a person like me work harder and harder and harder. And that's the important thing to remember.
Yes. Well, in closing, what would you say if you were to tell yourself something? Now you're looking back in your young self and you're just getting into the profession. What is it that you would say to yourself so that might give us some nuggets of wisdom with all of the new teachers that are starting in the field?
What would I say to myself? Probably hang on, because you're going to be on a roller coaster of a ride.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for listening to Educator Circle with Dr. Lisa and our teacher feature this month, Miss Beverly Claybrooks from Fulton County Schools. It's been a great conversation, and we look forward to sharing more about her. If you read her biography here in our attachment, we look forward to sharing more with you. And thank you so much for listening today. Bye-bye.